Hello everyone, welcome. So I have a new planner to show you today. I'm pretty excited about it. I will, as per usual, put links in the description in case you would like to get one of these for yourself or a gift for someone else or any of the other supplies I talk about. And then I will also put timestamps in the first pinned comment so you can jump back and forth between the sections. We're going to discuss whether or not this pretty new planner is better than a Hobonichi Techo Cousin, or is it worse than a Hobonichi, or is it somewhere in the middle? Let's look at a couple of different things, such as the price, the format, the layout, what covers fit it, and probably most importantly for 99% of the people watching, pen test and paint test. How does this handle ink? All right, so we're going to compare this lovely A5 size daily planner for 2026 to several different styles of Hobonichis and also a Stalogy and a Leuchtturm. So you can see it head to head against all of those with pen tests later. So it's from a company called Sunee. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I will put a link in the description to this specific planner. They have tons of planners. Sunee kind of seems like the Office Depot or Staples of maybe China. I think that's where they're from. You know, they sell file folders and page markers and all kinds of office supplies and dozens of different planners. But there's this one holy grail daily planner that has paper that is very, very, very similar to the Tomoe River, which is in a Hobonichi. But it's not exactly the same. So one important thing to note as you're shopping, if you want to run out and get one right now before I've even finished the video, is that they have two styles. They have this one that says Daily Planner 2026, and then they have this one that says Daily Diary 2026, and they are completely different. They're different formats, they're different paper, different prices. You want the one that says Daily Planner 2026. So link in the description to that. You do have a couple of different color choices, all right? Why is it better than Hobonichi? Number one, price. It is half the cost of a Hobonichi Techo Cousin. Half. That's right, half. So I think in that regard, it automatically gets at least some points in the is it better category. It's just simply more economical. All right, number two, why do I think it's better? Because when you open it up and you look at the dailies, there aren't any quotes in either Japanese or English or Chinese at the bottom. Hobonichis come in different languages. You can get the Chinese version, the Japanese version, or the English version. And in all of those cases, the Hobonichi Techo Cousin has quotes down at the bottom, and they take up a good solid inch of your page, and that reduces the real estate of where you can write. You can decorate it with things like acrylic paint or washi tape, but you can't write in those areas without covering it up with something writable. This one doesn't have that, and that automatically gives it points in the is it better than Hobonichi category. There's more room to write. I can do more micro journaling. I can do more planning. So that's a huge, huge plus for me. All right, those were the two reasons it's better, for sure, hands down. It's cheaper and you don't have those quotes at the bottom. Then we have the medium. I don't know, it's gonna kind of depend on you. Number one is the size. So it is an A5. This is a Hobonichi Techo Cousin Han from 2024. It's the one that's sort of hard copy or hardcover. See, it bends a little, but it's kind of a hardcover. And this is the Sunee. And so you can see they're very, very, very similar size, like this, approximately the same thickness. So that's probably the closest competitor in the Hobonichi lineup, and it's similar size. But the Sunee is maybe an 1/8 of an inch taller. So you wouldn't think that this 1/8 of an inch would make that much of a difference. Oh, but it does. Most of my A5 covers will not accept this sliding into them because it's just a smidge too tall and they aren't cut generously enough for that. So my Moterm, it doesn't fit. My Case Elegance cover from Amazon, it does not fit. My Kikuyo Systemic, which is a good vegan option, doesn't fit. It won't slide in there. What it will fit on is things which have bands. So an A5 traveler's notebook that's cut wide enough. This one is a custom traveler's notebook from Apple Pig, and it has the bands, right? So I can put this on the front band and the back band. And it works just like that. And then I have all the generous pockets in this beautiful, beautiful custom from Apple Pig. Just gorgeous. So a traveler's notebook you might be able to get away with. The other traveler's notebook cover that it fits on that I happen to have is from September Leather or New Esther. And these are available on Amazon. I'll put a link to them in the description. They don't come in different colors. You get one choice. It's kind of this chocolate, almost espresso brown. It has a pickup of a little bit of cherry color. It has a reinforced spine, which is fantastic. You open it up, and if I put this here on the front one and the last band like that, here you go. It almost is too wide, almost, but it fits. So put it like this, and then you say, well, why do I need a cover? You know, this is hardcover. Why do I need a cover? Well, it's nice to be able to put little notes or cards. You can turn it into a wallet. You have 3 card pockets here. You have a folio pocket here. In the back, another folio pocket. And then I like using covers if they have a pen loop, because then I can carry my pens around. And so this is a brand new, so it's not loosened at all, Sakura Pigma Micron. And that sits like this, flush. And I like to put 2 pens because I also like to carry a brush pen for doing titles and sketching and things like that. And so I can put both pens if I put them backwards. Pull the closure around, and there you go. It fits. So I'm putting this in the medium category for the size, the shape, the format, because I like that it's hardcover. It makes it easier for me to write on my lap. And it does fit in 2 of the covers that I currently have. So that's a plus. It's a negative that it won't fit in all my other covers, and that, you know, if you don't happen to have an A5 traveler's notebook, you might be out of luck on finding a cover that will fit. So that's why I'm putting it kind of in the medium category for size. Not necessarily completely a pro, not necessarily completely a con. All right, what's the other thing that makes it in between? It's just really up to you, and that is the layout. This is different than a cousin in the sense that it does not have the weeklies. So let's go through the layout as we open it up. We have blank end page, Daily Planner 2026, room to put your contact information. We have an at a glance from 2026, nice and big for the current year. And then for the past year, smaller 2025, and the future year 2027, also smaller. But you get all 3 of them. Next, we have an annual overview, and Hobonichi does this too. We have January, February, March, April, May, June. Flip the page, July, August, September, October, November, and December. And in this area, you can do forward planning. That's one great thing to do with this. I have also seen it used as an index because the daily pages kind of all run together, and maybe you would like kind of an idea of what is on those daily pages. So you can make like a table of contents here. You can also use it as a tracker. I've often used this area as a medical tracker. So I'll go in and I'll go like MTWTHS, or I forgot Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I'll put the number for the date, and then I'll write out to the side, I have a little symptom code, or your temperature if you're taking it, or what kind of, if I needed to take Midol, I'll write down Midol. So you can use it for tracking, for things like that. There's so many ways to use this annual kind of at a glance. Then we go to the monthly, which is also very similar to a Hobonichi, except this one has a Sunday start. That's really important, and it is dated. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, meaning every single day gets its own space, which is fantastic. What it doesn't do is give a full 6th row, which means, and this doesn't happen a lot in 2026, but when you get to May, you will see that you have full squares all the way through the 30th. And then the 31st kind of gets shortchanged just a little bit. It has a smaller area down here at the bottom. It does have its own box, which is good. They aren't splitting it with the 24th, but it is a smaller area. But you get the nice spots on the left to have kind of like a mini bullet journal. At the bottom, same thing, nice space down here at the bottom. And then you have at-a-glance calendars for the past month and the future month. So May, July, and then this is June. You do have tiny little squares. These measure 3 millimeter. And in the Hobonichi Techo Han, I would say they're closer to 3.5 millimeter. So very, very, very slightly smaller squares. So we go through the rest of the months, and then we move on to the daily section. And so what are we missing? Those weeklies. So if you use those vertical weeklies as kind of the crux of your planning, then no, this isn't better than Hobonichi. But if you found the weeklies unnecessary and you just wanted a monthly overview with daily pages, then you're all good. So that's why I put it in the in-between. All right, so at the beginning of every month, we have a page that's just blank, January 2026, and then we move right into the dailies. And these do change color, but very barely. They're not quite as bright as Hobonichi's colors. So we have January, February, March, it's like navy blue. April is kind of a burgundy. May, it's really dark gray. June is almost black. July has a green, like a hunter green. August is, I'm gonna call that navy again. September is like a rust. October is navy again, maybe even toward purple. November has that hunter green, and December is brown. It's like a chocolate brown. But, they're not bright colors. They don't stand out. It just helps differentiate them a little bit. And the pages themselves, let's look at January 3rd. You have the spot over here, just like you have in a cousin, which notes the month. And then the month here, the date, the moon phase, the day of the week, and then the number of the day compared to the whole year. So 3, you've gone 3 days, and you have 362 days remaining. I wish this weren't here. I think it adds stress for me. In January, great, you have 362 days left in the year. But once you get down here to like October, oh, I only have 79 days left, and what haven't I achieved yet? And I don't know, I find that kind of unnecessary. I also wish that the days of the week were bigger. I'm getting to that age where I don't use reading glasses yet, but in light that isn't that great, I think these are kind of hard to see. So pro and con there. You do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots here for kind of your priorities for that day. And then you have a timeline, and it has a very simple line right here, so that if you want to just decorate the whole page, you can do it. If you want to make this an art journal, go for it. You can use this whole space. But if you want to use this as an hourly planner, then it does have the line. If you want to keep the planner over here and your notes here and like a mini bullet journal down here, you know, there's lots of different ways that you can lay this out. And my suggestion would be to put this on a copy machine, make a copy, make several copies, cut the pages, trim them, and then practice. Practice how you want to do your layout. And then you can figure out what's going to work best for you for the year. But if you want to make it a true planner, we have 7 a.m., 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 8 p.m. And if you have plans later than that, as a lot of us do, you can just keep it going. So that wouldn't hold me back, but it might hold someone back who wants more of a 24/7 planner, or someone who wants military time. So it's something to note. You get 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and it's American time. All right, so that's what the days look like. Okay, so again, that's kind of in the middle. The layout is a benefit for me because I was ready to move away from weeks. I was finding that my weeks were going too fast because they were just all one page. I felt like the year was just moving at warp speed. And I thought that maybe calming down and planning one day at a time would help me slow down, spend more time on each day, have a planning area, have a priority area, note the weather, and then have some spots where I can write some micro journaling about the day, or I can illustrate something from the day, okay? So I like that it doesn't have the weeklies just because I wanted to make that change, but someone who needs the weeklies is not gonna like this. So I put that in the middle. There is not a pocket, by the way. There are 2 bookmarks like this, and they are the same color. I do kind of wish they were different colors, although I like that it's tone on tone. It does look nice and clean and neat. But if you have an alternate color, then it makes it easier to flip to the section that you want to be in. Okay? All right. So is it better? Yeah, because it's cheaper and the quotes aren't on the bottom. Is it worse? Not necessarily. It just depends on your purposes. But the thing that's going to make the difference for the vast majority of us is the pen test. Hobonichi has had issues. Let's just call it that. It's had issues. So the Hobonichi Techo Cousin, for I think through 2003, used the OG Tomoegawa Tomoe River paper from a very specific machine, a very specific recipe. It was just churning out the same kind of paper. And then for 2024, for the cousins especially, they switched to Tomoe River Sanzen. It's called Sanzen S Tomoe River because a new company is making Tomoe River paper, and it's just different. It's different. We'll talk about that as we compare the pen test results. It's different than the OG Tomoe River for better and for worse. There are things that make it better. It dries faster. There are things that make it worse. It bleeds through more often. It doesn't take watercolor the same way. So, and I think the big thing that people had an issue with, I didn't buy one in 2025, but I read a whole lot of reviews. And a lot of people were frustrated with Hobonichis because the pages were not consistent. So you would have a certain pen work great on June 14th, and then you'd flip to October 24th, and that same pen would bleed through, or would dry at a different rate, or would have a different sheen. So they were just finding inconsistencies, and I don't know whether Hobonichi has fixed that for 2026. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section if you have tried a 2024, 2025, 2026 Hobonichi Techo Cousin using that Sanzen paper. How has your experience been? Are you moving on to something else? Here's what I can tell you about the Sunee, S-U-N-E-E, or Sunee, Sunee, I don't know how to pronounce it. All right, here's our pen test. All of these are going to test the exact same thing. I'm going to run you through the results of this one, and then I'm going to get out the Hobonichis that I have, a Stalogy and a Leuchtturm, and we can look at them head to head. So I tested a Zebra Sensations brush pen, which is pigment-based. Uniball Signo RT 1.5 is a gel pen. Zebra Mildliner highlighter over a Signo. Pilot Precise Grip, which is a roller ball. Papermate Flare, which is porous point, kind of like a marker. Zebra Sarasa Dry 0.7 is a gel pen that's super juicy. A Pilot Varsity fountain pen. I am not a fountain pen user, but I always keep a Pilot Varsity on hand so that I can at least show you what that looks like. Obviously, fountain pens are going to depend on the ink you use, the nib size you use, but at least this will give you an idea. Pentel Fude Touch is a very, very juicy dye-based brush pen that tends to bleed through on a lot of papers. Marvy Artist Marker is a pigment-based marker. Sharpie Fine Point, good old-fashioned, juicy, brand new Sharpie, just like you would sign your autographs with. A Pitt Artist Pen by Faber-Castell is a pigment-based brush pen, which is great for coloring, sketching. A Tombow Mono Drawing Pen, which is very, very similar to a Sakura Pigma Micron. It's a technical drawing pen. In my case, I use it to sketch and then do ink and wash watercolors. Then I tested watercolors. I tested Mei Liang, pretty excellent, kind of that fun set with the parrot on the front. It's been very popular with YouTubers over the years. The negative is that it's not light fast and it's dye-based. A lot of the colors are dye-based and they're prone to bleed through these real thin papers. And then we have White Nights. White Nights is closer to artist quality. It's much more highly pigmented, so it's less likely to bleed through on these papers. And let's look at the results. So let's look at the details here. I found that in general, pretty much all Hobonichis, pretty much all Stalogies, and pretty much all Leuchtturms have approximately the same amount of ghosting or show through and approximately the same amount of bleed through. You might have little differences here and there, but in general, they tend to have approximately the same results. And you'll see that in a second when I compare them head to head. But let's look at the details. So that brush pen, it ghosts, but you can use the other side. Same with the gel pen. Here's the highlighter. Let's go down through that Papermate Flare that's super popular. There's ghosting, but you can use the other side. Here's the fountain pen, the Pilot Varsity fountain pen. If I were to get a magnifying glass, I would see some tiny dots where it ghosts more heavily, but it's not bleeding. And I think I would be able to use both sides. Now the Pentel Fude Touch brush pen, that is the closest I see so far to actual bleed through. And it really depends. With a brush pen, you're doing that thin upstroke, thick downstroke. And on that downstroke, you're pushing harder. You're pushing more ink onto that page. And it's dye-based. So you can see that I probably wouldn't use on both sides. Everything up till here, I'm good. Once I get to that Pentel Fude Touch, I would probably skip that. The Marvy Artist Marker is pretty good. That's pigment-based, so it's more likely to not bleed through anything. Sharpie Fine Point. I mean, I seriously think it bleeds through every single notebook I've ever used. It's expected. The question is, how much? And in this one, yeah, there's considerable bleed through. Pitt Artist Pen is a pigment-based marker, not bleeding, just ghosting. The Tombow Mono Drawing Pen, good. I can use that for ink and wash watercolors. Now I go to the watercolor, and I think this is in that category of it makes it better than the Hobonichis, because I'm not seeing any bleed through. I'm seeing a little ghosting. I can tell that I painted on the other side of the page, but I can't tell what. I can't tell what colors I used. There's a little bit right here of that Mei Liang, which is dye-based. I can see just a tiny bit where it might be blue. I don't think it's bleeding. I think I could use both sides of the page, but it definitely shows through a little more. And then this is the White Nights, and I don't see anything here with the, what is this? I think it's Quin Violet. This is the Cobalt Turquoise. And again, I see just a teeny bit of an area where there's a little bit more ghosting. But I would definitely use both sides of the page for painting. The other thing that I think makes it better than the Hobonichi for painting is that it doesn't buckle as much. And especially after I close this book, that's gonna start flattening out. I just painted these today, and I did not clip it to pull that paper while it was drying. This is just through the paint on the page. And I think it worked pretty well. There's a little bit of bronzing where it's in full mass tone. You can see that little shiny finish, just a tiny bit, but not a lot. So yeah, I think I can get away with watercolor, and I think I can get away with everything other than a Sharpie or a Pentel Fude Touch brush pen. Other than that, I am pretty impressed, honestly. At this price, to get this many pages of a nice thin paper, I think it's a pretty good result, really. So with something else, dry time. Whew. Wait until you see the comparison here with especially the original Tomoe River. Every single thing I wrote with dried instantly. Instantly, every single thing. I didn't even have to wait 5 seconds. So my methodology here is that I write it, I draw a line and a line. I wait 5 seconds and rub my finger over the first, and then I wait 5 more seconds and rub my finger over the second line. So I'm testing it at 5 seconds and 10 seconds. And if you were an original user of Hobonichis, you knew that that paper took forever to dry. Look at that, instant. There is no smudging at all. So that definitely adds points over on the, it's better than Hobonichi, right? Watercolor did dry faster than the Hobonichi, but it still took a while. It still takes longer to dry than a Leuchtturm or a Stalogy, because it is, I feel the coating there. Okay, so let's compare all of these pen test results. And I'm going to show you this daily planner from Sunee or Sunee, along with various Hobonichis, Stalogy, and Leuchtturm, and then also a lot of other thin, similar papers that other notebooks and planners are made out of. I'm able to do that because Paper Penguin Co. on Etsy sells these little packs of paper samples for the thin papers, the Bible thin papers. And she does that because she makes the most amazing traveler's notebook inserts, but so that you don't, spend a lot on the inserts without liking the paper, she sells the sample packs. Awesome. So there's a link in the description to this listing on Etsy. So we're going to compare, and I'm going to put a piece of paper here because it's not fair to compare a white background to a dark background. You actually get different results depending on what's behind the paper. So I'm going to put a white paper here, and then that way they'll be more similar. So this is onion skin paper. And you can see that the Sunee absolutely does 1,000 times better as far as bleed through and ghosting. Okay, then this is Bank Mitsubishi. This is no longer made, but it's still available in some notebooks and planners and in some of Dominique's inserts at Paper Penguin Co. This is Bank Mitsubishi. A little more similar, but the Sunee wins. Then we have View Corona Bright White. This is a 52 GSM paper. Pretty similar, although I do see more bleed through with the watercolor on the View Corona, but otherwise pretty similar. That's the View Corona Bright White, and then this is View Corona White. Okay. Then we have Eastery, which is 64 GSM. I think that the Sunee does better than that, but I like the way the Eastery handles watercolor. I think it looks just beautiful on the page, but there's more show through and ghosting and bleed through with the Eastery than with the Sunee. Okay, the next one is Shirai. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Shiraoi, Shirai. This is Shirai White. I think the Sunee wins that test. And then this is Shirai Cream. I think the Shirai definitely has a little bit more ghosting. Then this is B7 Natural. It's 75 GSM. Now this is pretty similar. Look at that. Pretty similar here. So B7 Natural, 75 GSM. So let me handle this. Wow, that feels really similar. Similar weight, similar crinkle. I feel like the B7 is just a little bit heavier though. And there's a massive difference in the dry time. Look at this. Even though the back looked very, very similar, look at the dry time. The Sunee dries instantly with all my pens and markers, but the B7 Natural really sat on top of the page and took forever to dry. Even if I waited 10 or 20 seconds, it would still smudge. So in this quest to figure out what kind of paper is this, it's not B7 Natural. Okay, and then the last one, she just calls Bright White. This is 118 GSM. And, ooh, look at that bleed through on that watercolor. Totally different. Okay, so those are the loose papers that I have. Now let's look at the planners and the notebooks compared. Okay, so the first one is the most recent Hobonichi Techo Cousin that I have, which is the 2024 Han. And this is Sanzen paper. And so first we're gonna look at how long did it take to dry. And I would say that there is a difference. So here's the Sanzen, here's the Sunee. The Sunee dried faster. I had no smudging, whereas the Hobonichi Techo Cousin Han with the Sanzen paper, I did have smudging, definitely after 5 seconds. It was better once I waited 10 seconds. And then with the watercolors, it definitely took longer to dry on the Sanzen paper, shorter to dry on the Sunee. Not short, but shorter. And there's a lot more of that shiny bronzing at the full mass tone with the Sanzen paper. Less bronzing with the Sunee. So in my book, that makes the Sunee paper better. What about bleed through? Okay, so here's our Sunee, here's our Han with Sanzen. I'm having a hard time telling any difference once you look at the flip side. Very, very similar. That Pentel Fude touch shows through less on the Sanzen. And I think the Sharpie, even though it bleeds through on both, I think it's less bleed through on the Sanzen. But otherwise, they're equal. They really are equal. Watercolors are pretty equal. So the biggest difference I'm thinking here between the Hobonichi Techo Cousin Han format, which is the Sanzen S paper by Tomoe River. Gosh, that's a mouthful, isn't it? The biggest difference is the dry time. That Sunee Daily Planner dries way faster, way faster. All right, let's compare this to some other Hobonichis. Okay, so next we have the Hobonichi Techo Cousin from 2022. This is the OG, the original Tomoegawa paper from Tomoe River. And you'll see that, again, the difference is the dry time when we look at it directly. There's no smudging with the Sunee Daily Planner. There's a lot of smudging with the Hobonichi Techo Cousin. Smudging at 5 seconds, and once I waited more like 10 to 15 seconds, it's still smudging. It just took forever for ink to dry on this paper. And it's probably the biggest reason that I moved away from Hobonichi in general. And then when you look at our paint samples, you've got a lot more bronzing. It just sits on top of the page. It's so shiny. And I know some people like that effect with their art and they have the patience to let it dry. And if you like it, good for you. But it was not something that I enjoyed. So this is definitely an improvement. All right, then with the bleed through. All right, so here we go. Pretty similar. Pretty similar. Look at the difference with the Sharpie. Wow. That's the only major difference. Otherwise, the ghosting is very, very, very similar. Same with the paint. Okay. What do we want to compare next? Okay, so next we have a very popular comparison, a Stalogy 365. And when I first started using the Sunee, I was thinking, hey, maybe this is Stalogy paper, because as you can see, super fast dry time with those pens and markers, no smudging with either of them. I thought, wow, maybe this is the same, but it's not. The Stalogy just has a little bit more tooth. It just feels drier. The Sunee really does feel like an ice skating rink. It's that smooth. But the results are ridiculously similar as far as dry time. And the watercolors, I think, look really, really similar. Okay, so then I flip it over and look at the bleed through. Oh, wow, look at this difference. So I'd say the Stalogy has more bleed through, because even like this is a Pilot Precise Grip, which is a rollerball pen. You can read real specifically, and you can't on the Sunee. And the Pilot Varsity Fountain Pen, I think, has more dots where it's trying to bleed through. That Zebra Sarasa Dry comes through darker on the Stalogy. The Sharpie, not as much. And the watercolor, you can see much more clearly on the second page on the Stalogy. So yeah, you know, paper is weird, because you would look at the front and think it was exactly the same, exactly. But then you flip it over, and I think the Sunee wins hands down on the flip side. Okay, so that's Stalogy 365. So then we have the Leuchtturm 1917, kind of the good old-fashioned bullet journal. This one is 411 pages. It's the 80 GSM paper from the classic Leuchtturm. It's still thin. You still get some crinkle, but not as much as on all these other thinner papers. And then you see with the dry time, I think at 10 to 15 seconds, you can't tell a difference. But that instant 5-second reaction, there is a little bit of smudging on the Leuchtturm. Watercolor looks a little bit different. The White Knights are the same exact pigments. The Mei Liang is the same turquoise, but the purple that I used is different. And that's why this looks brighter than this one. But the finish looks pretty similar. And then when I flip it over, here is Leuchtturm versus Sunee, and I think it's pretty similar. You know, it's give and take. Again, like the Sharpie doesn't bleed through as much on the Leuchtturm. The Pentel Fude Touch doesn't bleed through as much. But Leuchtturm doesn't make this kind of a formatted daily planner, so it's not necessarily a head-to-head comparison. So I hope those comparisons help you as you're deciding whether to try one of these. I have to say, for the price, I think it's worth it, even just to play with the paper. You know, I'm going to try to use this as a daily memory keeping, record keeping device for 2026. I don't know if it's going to be my main planner, but I think it will definitely be something to sit down and help me take inventory of each day and slow down more than I am with the weekly planners that I'm using. But I also think it would be fun just to use for pen tests, to use as an art journal. You can ignore the dates, or you could washi over them pretty easily and use it for, you know, whatever you want to play with pen and ink and paint. So I hope this gave you some food for thought on this fun new planner, which may be a Hobonichi competitor. I would love to hear from you in the comments section. Have you tried one of these yet? Would you like to try one of these? Are you a Hobonichi person? How has your experience been with their paper? And are you interested in trying something new? Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this helpful. Please come back and visit me for more planning, journaling, and anything to do with making your paper look pretty. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.